Now we move over to the Gita talk for this session 13. So this will be given by Balaji, and even last year Balaji's talk was very wonderfully received by so many people. So now we are eagerly wanting to listen to Balaji. So over to Balaji. Balaji, you are, I think, made already the co-host, so you should be able to take the screen.
Okay, thank you. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, perfect. Yeah.
Okay. Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Vidya Dravinam Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Shri Dakshinamurti Sudeshikendram Dvaipayanam Sutrakritam Munindram Sri Shankaram Bhashyakritam Yatindram Maddeshi Kanchapi Namami Vidyai. Om Namo Brahmadipyo Brahma Vidya Sampradaya Kartrubhyo Vamsarishibhyo Mahatbhyo Namo Gurubhyah Sarvopaplavarahita Prajnana Ganaha Pratyakarto Brahmaivahamasmi. Om Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraikapanaye Jnana Mudraya Krishnaya Gita Mrtaduhe Namaha. Pranams everyone. I just wanted to clarify first thing. When the introduction was made, I was told I'm a Guruji. I'm not a Guruji. I'm just a student. I am still learning, and I'm just sharing whatever I'm learning. So if there are any mistakes, please forgive me. Whatever I'm able to convey properly, all that credit goes to my gurus and acharyas. So today I will be sharing something on chapter 13, Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga. First, before going to Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga, which is chapter 13, this is the beginning of the Charama Shatkam, the final 6 chapters. Bhagavan actually in the first 6 chapters had 3 main topics that he covered. In the first Shatkam, he basically covered Karma Yoga as a sadhana, and then he also talked about Jiva Swarupam, and then Jiva Prayatna, which is a self-effort. That was the 3 main topics in the first 6 chapters. Then in the second 6, which is between 7 and 12, he had covered Upasana Yoga as a sadhana, and he talked about Ishvara Swarupam, the nature of Bhagavan. And then finally, Ishvara Anugraha, basically the prasada that we get from Ishvara. Now, 13th chapter is the beginning of the final Shatkam. And here, Bhagavan covers Jnana Yoga as one main topic. Jnana Yoga, as you know, is the direct sadhana meant to understand or discover oneself as Brahman or Atma. In other words, to own up to Aham Brahmasmi. The second topic that he also covers in this final 6 chapters is Jiva Ishvara Swarupa Aikyam, the essential oneness between Jiva and Ishvara. When we say Tattvamasi, the Tvam is Jiva Swarupam, the Tat is Ishvara Swarupam, the Asi is basically the Jiva Ishvara Swarupa Aikyam. One thing we have to note is that there is no event called Jivatma Paramatma merger. Here, when we say Aikyam, it means dropping the misconception of separation or dropping the wrong notion of difference that seemingly exists. So this is actually a silent intellectual pursuit, which is born out of the understanding of the fact that I am never away from Ishvara. So this is Jiva Ishvara Swarupa Aikyam. The third main topic that he covers in this final 6 chapters is Sadgunas. Sadgunas are the noble virtues that are required to be able to absorb this teaching. In other words, we can also call as, in Vedantic terms, Sadhana Chatushtayam. So this is the what Bhagavan covers. And especially in chapter 13, 14, and 15, the first 3 chapters, he is basically bringing out a lot of those concepts from Upanishads. And therefore, we always say, Sarvo Upanishado Gavo Dokta Gopala Nandanaha. So all these 3 chapters mainly focus on Jnana Yoga. So with that kind of introduction, we'll go into the Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga. This is a very important chapter from a philosophical angle, because Bhagavan explains Atma here using Drik Drishya Viveka, basically a subject-object differentiation. And he also employs the Neti Neti Nyaya, which is to say not this, not that. This is a popular method which is used in Shastras to arrive at our true nature, where we go on negating everything we experience. Apart from this explanation of Atma, Bhagavan in this chapter explains also the Sadguna, the virtues that are needed, and the discipline, the sadhanas to actually for the spiritual pursuit. And then finally, once we attain the jnana, attain moksha, what is the phalam, what is the benefit of such a knowledge? So he covers end to end, thus making it a complete chapter. It gives an end-to-end view of the entire pursuit, spiritual pursuit. So Shloka 0, that's why I would call it, basically because we also did not chant Arjuna's question. Many books have this Arjuna's question as the first shloka, so I'm going to call this a Shloka 0 here. So here Bhagavan, Arjuna basically asks a question and says, Prakritim Purusham Chaiva Kshetra Kshetra Me Evacha Etat Veditum Ichchami Jnanam Nyayam Cha Keshava. He basically asks a question, Bhagavan, please explain the meaning of these 6 terms. Prakriti, Purusha, Kshetram, Kshetrajna, Jnanam, and Nyayam. The explanation of these terms become the 13th chapter. And typically, these 6 terms actually can be reduced to only just 3, because Prakriti and Kshetram refer to the Anatma. Purusha, Kshetrajna, and Nyayam principles refer to Atma. And the Jnanam that is referred in this chapter refers to the values, the Sadgunas. So essentially, we need to discuss about these 3 topics. And Bhagavan actually starts in Shloka 1 and 2. He gives the explanation of Kshetrajna. But before giving the explanation of Kshetrajna, he says the body is Kshetram. Idam Shariram Kaunteya Kshetram iti abhidiyate. He says this body is Kshetram, and the knower principle within this body is Kshetrajna. And not only that, he says that he is the knower principle that is present in all bodies. He is the knower principle, which is the Parabrahma Swarupa. Basically, he is indicating Jiva Ishvara Aikyam here. And then from Shlokas 3 to 6, the Kshetra Tattva, the Anatma Tattva, is further explained by Bhagavan. He initially praises this knowledge, says that this teaching has come through rishis, through a parampara. And then he says, with regards to Kshetram, whatever we experience and whatever can be experienced, all the Drishya Padartha, they will come under Anatma. So anything that I feel, I touch, I see, everything are all Anatma. So which means basically the entire universe comes under Anatma, because universe is an object of my experience. Not only the universe, even the body, all the bodies that I see, even not just all the bodies, even my own body, I am able to experience. And hence it is Anatma. And not just the body, the mind is also an object of experience. And hence my mind is also Anatma. So this is how he explains. Now the question next comes is, what is this nature of this Anatma? And Bhagavan basically gives 3 main qualities of this Anatma. One, it is Achetana Swarupam. Achetana Swarupam meaning insentient. It is a matter principle. It is a Jadam. So, and it is made of Panchabhutas. So this Anatma is made of Panchabhutas, which is Akasha, Vayu, Apuha, Agnihi, and Prithvi. So this Panchabhutas. And this Anatma is also endowed with all properties. It's Sagunam. It is attributes, with attributes, and not just one or two attributes. It's got varieties of attributes, size, shape, color, mass, everything. All these are Anatma. And not only that, it is subject to change, modifications. It does not remain the same even for a moment. The mind is the best example for that. Our mind keeps changing. So it's Anatma. And therefore, Anatma is Achetanam, Anatma is Sagunam, Anatma is Savikaram. Now, we'll have to remember this, because when we come to Atma, the opposite of it will be Atma's characteristics. Now, when we discuss this, questions may arise in our mind. Is mind really a matter? Yes, mind is also a matter, and it is made of subtle matter. It is also a Jadam principle, and it is made of a combination of Panchabhutas only, except that it is made of Sukshma Panchabhutas, the subtle Panchabhutas. Now, next question might come is, but I do feel, the body seems to be sentient. After all, I can feel, I can touch. Yes, body seems to be sentient, but the sentiency of the body and the mind is borrowed. It is not its inherent nature. Just like when we keep a vessel over a stove, the vessel actually borrows the heat from the fire of the stove. So the heat is just temporary. And similarly, the sentiency in the body is also temporary, and anything that is temporary will leave one day. So it is not its inherent nature. And when it leaves, that is when we call it as death. So what is death? When the sentiency leaves the body, we call that event as death. Now I'm going to go into the slokas 12 to 17. I'm not going to take from 7 to 11. 7 to 11, Bhagavan discusses about all the Sadgunas. We will see it at the end. Now we'll go to sloka number 12 to 17. Now here what happens is, what we have to understand is, a drishya anatma, anything that is an object of experience. If there is an object of an experience, it presupposes drik-atma, which means if there is an object of experience, then there has to be a subject. So if the whole universe is drishya prapancha, it is an object of experience, then it means that there should be an experiencer subject behind it. This is called as drik drishya viveka, which talks about two things. One, every object presupposes the existence of a subject, and a subject cannot be an object of experience. This example that we give is basically, if I see a photograph, then surely there should be a camera that should have existed. So if just as an object, then there should be a subject. And we also know that the camera lens itself will not be able to take a photograph of itself. It will not be able to take a photograph of itself. So subject cannot be an object of experience. So this method, as I said, is a drik drishya viveka. So which means if there is an anatma, there has to be an atma, and atma can never experience itself. This is what we have to gain from here. And then here Bhagavan also uses, we have to note that every attribute that I experience belong to the object and not the subject. So if I see a red flower, the red belongs to the flower. The object of experience, the attribute that I experience belongs to the object and not to the subject. This is a very important concept to know, because in this method, what we do is, using this method, we arrive at our true nature. We go on negating everything we experience. Whatever we experience, we are not. We are not this, we are not that. It is called as neti method. Whatever I experience, I am not. With that, we arrive at what is Atma. What is Atma? Here Bhagavan explains using the Nyayam. He explains Nyayam in slokas 12 to 17. Nyayam, as I said, it's the same as Kshetrajna and Purusha. Both are Atma Tattva only. And remember, we said Anatma is Achetanam. It's a matter principle, Jadam, which means all the objects are Achetanam, which means the subject has to be Chetanam, the consciousness principle. And Bhagavan says, how does he explain Kshetrajna? He says, by which Paramatma we get the feeling in our body. By which Paramatma, if absent, the sense organs and the body will not have sentiency. That Paramatma Tattva, that which is independent of all bodies and on which all bodies are dependent, that Paramatma Tattva, that is Chetanam, and that Atma, we have to own it ourselves. That Atma is me. What are the features of this Atma? So Swamiji had given 5 features of Atma. Atma, the consciousness, is not part, product, or property of the body. Atma, so it is not part of the body, it is not a product of the body, it is not a property of the body. It is an independent entity, it is different from the body, but it pervades the body and it also enlivens the body. And it is not limited by the boundaries of the body. It is present everywhere. It is Sarvagataha. And this Atma will continue to exist even after the body dies. Even when the sentiency leaves the body, the sentiency is there. The consciousness principle is there. Just that we will not be able to, that Atma will not be able to transact in this world because the medium, the body medium, is not there anymore. So these are the features of the Atma Tattva. Now, what is the benefit of knowing this Atma Tattva? All this Jnanam, Nyayam, all these things, when we listen, Kshetrajna, Bhagavan clearly explains that in Shloka 18, he says, only a Bhakta who knows these Atma, Anatma principles, this knowledge of self, Ishvara, and all this Anatma, he will attain my nature. Basically, he says he attains my nature. And not only that, in Shloka 23, he says he is not born again. So which means when he says that person attains my nature, it is again what we are saying is Jiva Ishvara Aikyam is again brought in here in Shloka 18. So that Atma is me and that Atma is also Ishvara. So with this we covered Anatma and Atma until Shloka 17. Now from Shloka 18 is the basically the Jiva Ishvara Aikyam. From Shloka 19 to 23, Bhagavan basically takes Prakriti and Purusha together. Prakriti, as you know, is Anatma. Purusha is basically the Atma Tattva. And here he says, Prakriti refers to Maya. Prakriti refers to Maya. Kshetram that we discussed is the manifest version of Prakriti. Kshetram is the manifest version of Prakriti or Maya. So basically, Maya and Prakriti are basically the manifest and unmanifest versions of the same thing. So we've already seen Anatma is Savikaram, constantly changing. So Anatma will go from manifest to unmanifest and from unmanifest to manifest. It keeps changing all the time. So these two conditions are called as Vyakta Avastha and Avyakta Avastha. Vyakta meaning manifest, Avyakta meaning unmanifest. We can also call them as Karya Avastha and Karana Avastha. Karya Avastha is basically, we can say, the effect, and the Karana Avastha is the cause. So it goes between cause and effect. And this Vyakta Avastha, the manifest, is what we see. The Prapancha is the manifest version of Maya. And the unmanifest version is basically called Maya, or we can say Prakriti. So the example that we have to use is basically the water changing to water vapor. Water is the Vyakta Avastha, the manifest condition, and vapor is the unmanifest condition, the Avyakta Vyavastha of water. So similarly, the cosmos, universe has Vyakta Avastha, which we experience now, and it is also called as prapancha, we can say, and it has got an avyakta avastha, which is maya. So here he started with this, and then he explains basically the Prakriti and Purusha together, and he says Prakriti is the cause of creation of all physical and subtle bodies. And he basically, the creation I have picked up from another chapter, but basically the Prakriti is the cause of the universe. And the Purusha is he explains Purusha as Upadrashta, Anumanta, Bharta, Bhokta. In slokas 19 to 23, he refers to Purusha as Upadrashta, Anumanta, Bharta, Bhokta. Basically, it is the proximate witness, it is the supporter of Prakriti, it is the sustainer of Prakriti, and it is the, he says experiencer, but we will have to see how does experiencer mean here. Basically, he says Purusha is said to be the cause of experience in pleasures and pains. As I said, the anatma is anadi principle. It is achetanam, savikaram, sagunam, we saw. And the atma is chetanam, nirvikaram, nirguna. Now, when we say this Purusha is said to be the cause of experience of pleasures and pain, actually we have to, when we analyze, who is actually the person who is actually having this sorrow or experiencing this pain? It is whether the body or whether the atma. If we ask that question, whether it is a body which is experiencing pain or pleasure, or whether it is the atma which is experiencing pain or pleasure, the correct answer is it is the jivatma. The jivatma is the one who looks like he is in sorrow. The jivatma is basically a combination of mind and Purusha. He is the one who looks like he is in sorrow. Actually, there is no sorrow according to Advaita. If we understand it clearly, it is all out of ignorance we think that we are in sorrow. And why do we think we are in sorrow? Because of our attachment to the gunas, Maya's gunas, and therefore it seems that we are in sorrow. So going after that Bhagavan in sloka 32 and 33, he basically compares Atma Tattva with space and light. Basically, Akasha Tattva and Prakasha Tattva. If we look at it, Akasha is one. Surya Prakasha is also one. So Bhagavan says consciousness is also one. In the same way, consciousness is also one. And so it is Ekatvam. Then Akasha cannot move from one place to another. It cannot move from place to place. Objects move within space, but space itself does not move. In the same way, consciousness also does not move. So it is Achalam. And then Akasha, the space is indivisible. Although we may say that, okay, we construct something and we say the space we have divided, it is actually the space is not divided, because the moment we actually remove the walls, the space is only one space. It is just, we have a different name for the space within and outside. So Akasha is indivisible, Prakasha is indivisible. In the same way, consciousness is also indivisible. So Akandaha. Then Akasha is everywhere, but it is not contaminated. It cannot be polluted. The light also cannot be contaminated. The light can fall in Ganga Jal as well as in garbage, but the light itself will not get contaminated or polluted. In the same way, consciousness also cannot be contaminated, and therefore Asangatvam. Then Akasha supports everything. Only within space everything happens. Similarly, the consciousness principle supports the matter principle. Atma supports Anatma, and therefore it is Sarvadaram. Finally, Prakasha illumines everything. In the same way, only because of this consciousness principle, things are known to us. We get this awareness because of the consciousness principle, the Atma Tattva. And therefore it is called as Sarva Prakasha. So these are the features of Atma. And when we see these features of Atma, it is not to be studied as a third person principle. We have to understand that Atma is me. I am that Atma. That is the Atma comparison that Bhagavan gave. Then I will go to the shloka number 7 to 11, where Bhagavan in the 5 shlokas explains the sadhana chatushtaya sampatti. Sadhana chatushtaya sampatti, he basically talks about using the topic of jnanam. He takes the topic of jnanam and explains all the 20 virtues. These 20 virtues are basically the preparatory virtues. The preparatory virtues, basically the discrimination, dispassion, discipline, and desire, we can say, or viveka, vairagya, shatka sampatti, and mumukshutvam. These 20 virtues put together, or these 4 have been expanded by Bhagavan into these 20 virtues. And he starts with amanitvam, adambitvam, ahimsa, kshanti, arjavam, acharyopasanam, shaucham, sthairyamatma, vinigraha. And there, amanitvam basically means humility, not seeking this recognition. That is amanitvam. Then he says adambitvam. Amanitvam is the internal feeling. When adambitvam is what we show outside. So adambitvam is basically having simplicity or being non-pretentious. So amanitvam is a feeling that we have to have. Adambitvam is basically we have to ensure that we do not show off. Adambitvam. Then ahimsa. Ahimsa, not hurting others. When we say not hurting others, at all 3 levels. The body level, words level, as well as at the mind level. So at all 3 levels, not hurting others. Then Shanti. Shanti has basically 2 meanings. One is Titiksha and the other one is Shama. Titiksha means, again, it can be forbearance or endurance, we can say. Titiksha also means patience. So Titiksha is basically forbearance, endurance, patience, and also forgiveness. Forgiveness as a quality we have to imbibe. This is Shanti. Then Arjavam. Arjavam is basically straightforwardness. Straightforwardness, when we say, where my words, deeds, and mind are aligned. All the 3 are aligned. That is called as straightforwardness or uprightness. The opposite of Arjavam is basically Vakram. We have used this term, Vakram. So opposite of straightforwardness is Vakram. If you see even the straightforwardness, the subset of straightforwardness is basically Satyam. When the words and deeds are aligned, it's called as Satyam. So actually Satyam is a subset of Arjavam. Then Acharyopasanam, Guru Seva, doing Seva to Guru. Saucham, when we say Saucham, it means purity. It means purity, both external purity, things around me, the possessions that I have, the clothes, the place around me has to be pure. Not only that, the body has to be pure, which is also external purity. Then talk about internal purity, which is the purity that has to be attained at the mind level, at the intellect level. So that is Saucham. Then Sthairiam. Sthairiam is basically steadfastness. I have to be steadfast in whatever I take up. Then Atma Vinigraha. Atma Vinigraha, here Atma refers to the body mind. And he says discipline of body and mind. Basically we can say Shamaha Damaha, Atma Vinigraha. Then Vairagyam. Vairagyam is basically dispassion on all sensory pleasures. Remember, Vairagyam is not about hatred, it's not about aversion, it is about not getting affected by things, whether they are there or not there. That is Vairagyam. Then Anahankaraha. Anahankaraha means without having any garva. Basically non-identification with this body. That is Anahankaraha. Then Dukkha Dosha Anudarshanam. Dukkha Dosha Anudarshanam. Basically we have to have this, Anudarshanam means seeing it repeatedly. What we have to see repeatedly? The dosha. What is the dosha? Dosha of Dukkham. Where is the Dukkham? He says the entire world. This world is it's misery. So we have to ponder over this misery of samsara again and again, and by that we gain dispassion, basically vairagya. Then asaktihi. Asaktihi basically means absence of any attachment. Asaktihi. Then anabhishvangaha. Anabhishvangaha means this absence of sense of me, mine, mineness. We can say, use the word mineness. And where exactly? With regards to putra dhara griha, he says. Putra dhara griha means, putra means children, my children, and then my spouse, and then griha means house, but we can include all the possessions, my everything. Have absence of the sense of mindness. Then samachittatvam. Samachittatvam means equipoise, constant equipoise of mind when there is situation is favorable or when the situation is unfavorable. At both places, we're having a constant equipoise of mind. Then he says bhakti. Bhakti, and bhakti, he says, not normal bhakti. He gives some additional qualifications to the bhakti. He says it has to be complete bhakti, and it has to be unswerving bhakti. Unswerving bhakti or devotion is needed. Then vivikta desha sevitvam. Vivikta desha sevitvam is seeking solitude. I should be seeking solitude willingly, and that place should be, devoid of asaucham. It should be clean, and it should be devoid of bhaya. I should not get fear by going alone. So, and it should be devoid of people. So I should seek solitude. It's a very important sadhana that one has to do. And then arati jana samsadi. Arati jana samsadi means not desiring people's company. Not desiring people's company, basically to avoid all this gossip on others, because sometimes gossip can actually make us get attracted to people's company. So not desiring that. Then tattva jnanartha darshanam. Tattva jnanartha darshanam, bringing forth the benefit of this knowledge of the truth. So if once I get this jnana, once I get this moksha, what is the benefit I'm going to get? And seeing that repeatedly again and again is tattva jnanartha darshana. Then adhyatma jnana nityatvam, basically doing atma vichara, constantly doing atma vichara, doing jnana yoga. So these are the 20 values that Bhagavan brings up. Bhagavan also talks about values, and he takes an entire chapter 16 where he talks about Daivi Asuri Sampat as well. That will be more like a continuation from here, and some of the values will also be repeated there. Each value we can talk about hours for each one of them, but we will just move on. So then Bhagavan, in between in sloka 24 and 25, he basically gives the sadhanas. He presents the 5 stages to attain this knowledge, and he says Karma Yoga, Upasanam, Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam. Karma Yoga is the first stage. It is the first stage to remove the impurities of our mind, Mala Nivritti, we can say. And what is the benefit? We attain a pure mind. Then the second one is Upasanam, basically meditating on Ishvara, Saguna Ishvara, with form. And then this upasana is basically to remove all the restlessness of the mind, the extrovertedness of the mind. The mind keeps going out, to actually control and discipline this mind, or we can say vikshepa nivritti. And by doing that, what happens? The mind becomes calm, tranquil, you can say a focused mind. We get a focused mind by upasana. Then Shravanam. Shravanam is basically consistent, systematic study of scriptures. We'll have to consistently and systematically study, and not just for overnight. It has to be done over a period of time. It has to be done over a period of time, and it has to be done under the guidance of a competent acharya. And what is the benefit of this? It is to remove ignorance. basically we will get the Ajnana Nivritti. Once we get that Ajnana Nivritti, I will get this Aham Brahmasmi knowledge. And once I get this knowledge, I'll still have some doubts. See, most of my doubts will be cleared, but then when I start reflecting on it, I'll get some of the doubts. And if some are there, we have to raise those questions and get them answered, and get, that is called as Samshaya Nivritti. Samshaya Nivritti, removal of doubt. So I will get a doubtless knowledge with conviction as Mananam. That is Mananam. And then what happens? The final stage is where I have to change the perspective of self. The body orientation is the most powerful vasana. You know, we have been living for crores of janma thinking that I am this body. Now this orientation has to change. And this is the most powerful vasana. And therefore we'll have to spend some time to come out of that habit. To come out of that habit of thinking that I am this body. So we have to keep reinforcing that I am not the body, but I am functioning through this body, through this medium. This is a shift of this self-perspective. And by doing that, we not only change the opinion about ourselves, we also change the opinion about this world. So basically, the Viparita Bhava Nivritti, say, Viparita Bhava Nivritti, removing this habitual thinking pattern. And at the end of it, I get an internalized knowledge. I get a knowledge which becomes my personality. So this is basically the final stage where we can say the person or we have attained moksha. So these are the sadhanas. And Bhagavan says, you know, a sadhaka may be in any of these steps. In any of these steps, but there will be, but he has to move through these 5 stages anyway, and finally attain moksha. So after this, now what happens once I get moksha? What is the phalam? What is the benefit? Bhagavan explains that in shloka 26 to 34. And he explains, he gives a few benefits of this jnana. The first one is basically sarvatra samadarshanam. So when I go to a beach, instead of different waves, I see one underlying water. Sarvatra samadarshanam. Or if I go to a jewelry shop, instead of seeing different ornaments, I see one underlying gold. So I keep these words like, you know, bangle, rings, chain. These are all needed for transactions. But in and through these transactions, I will have the gold darshanam. It is called a samadarshanam. So in and through this anatma, I will see one underlying atma. And the best, what is the benefit of this? The practical benefit of this is basically I get freedom from raga and dvesha. They are the 2 main primary problems of samsara. Because there is nobody else, there is no raga, there is no dvesha. I see only one. So raga dvesha abhavaha. So freedom from attachment, freedom from aversion. That is the first benefit, first phalam. The second one is amritatva prapti. See, when amritatva prapti means basically immortality. See, when I took myself as this anatma, when I take myself to be this body, I conclude I am mortal because I have a date of birth. This body has a date of birth. This body has a date of death. Body is mortal. But when I know I am this atma, now I can claim I am immortal. So the question is whether I am immortal or mortal. I am always immortal. But what I lack is the knowledge that I am already immortal. So amritatva prapti is the second benefit. Then akartrutva abhoktrutva prapti. So I come to know that I am neither the karta nor the bhokta. I am neither the doer nor the enjoyer. But in my presence, matter is interacting. This body is a matter, this mind is a matter, another body is a matter, another mind is also a matter. So in my presence, the Atma's presence, all these are interacting. So all these changes belong to the matter. And I, the consciousness, I am like sunlight. I illumine everything, but I am not tainted by anything. Then the final one is Brahmatvam. Brahmatvam means basically limitlessness. When I consider in the ocean, when the wave considers as a wave, then it is limited. But once when the wave thinks that it is the water, it is also the water, it can claim that it is everywhere in the ocean. So in the same way, we can experience limitlessness once we undertake, or once we say, basically once we claim that we are the Atma. So these are the benefits. And what is the benefit? These benefits are basically nothing but, in simple language, we can say it is Jivan Mukti. So Jivan Mukti is the benefit of this knowledge. The thing about all other disciplines of knowledge, whatever we study, all this Apara Vidya, physics, chemistry, biology, whatever, medicine, whatever, it will not make any fundamental difference. Whereas this knowledge, it makes a crucial difference, because it takes me out of samsara and gives me mukti. It takes me out of bondage and liberates me. So this is basically the benefit or jnana phalam. So with that, Bhagavan basically completes chapter 13. Then I would probably will give you a quick overview of chapter 14. And then the next speaker would probably go in detail about this. Basically, in chapter 13, Bhagavan explains the Atma Tattva using Drigdrishya Viveka. He employed Drigdrishya Viveka to explain Atma. In 14, he will use Saguna Nirguna Vibhaga. So subject-orient differentiation as against attribute-less differentiation. Saguna means with attributes, Nirguna means without attributes. And Bhagavan in this chapter deals with these three gunas, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. And he will say that these three gunas are the stepping stones through which it will take us to a Gunatita. So basically, through these gunas, Gunatraya Dwara, we attain moksha. Therefore, it is called as Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga. And in this chapter, Bhagavan not only explains Atma using Saguna, Nirguna, Vibhaga. Apart from that, Bhagavan also explains the three gunas in detail, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. He explains, and then he gives a guidance on how to transcend these gunas and become a Gunatita. Gunatita is nothing but a Mukta Purusha, basically a Jnani. And he explains, once a person becomes Gunatita, what is the indication? How do we identify a Gunatita? How does he conduct himself? That is also explained in chapter 14. Finally, in this chapter, he also touches upon creation again. And he again gives a Brahma Lakshanam and Jnana Phalam again making this chapter also a complete chapter by itself. So 13, 14, and 15 are clearly important chapters. Each one is gives an end-to-end view of the Vedanta. So with that, I conclude my talk. Thank you so much. Sarvam Krishnarpanamastu. Sri Krishnaya Paramatmane Namaha. Purnamidam Purnat Purnamadachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shri Guru Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Balaji. Let me just spotlight you to the others so that everybody can see you. Yeah. Okay, great. Wonderful. Thank you for a beautiful talk, as like last time, with beautifully illustrated PowerPoint slides. And I think you've taken a lot of effort for creating this. So thank you so much for that. And I think it really gives a lot of, the visual representations make it easier for people to understand. Okay, thank you very much. And now the field is open to the audience, and our speaker for today, Balaji, is available here, so he can clear all the doubts or questions or comments. So anybody, any questions?
Jason, you're on mute. You're.
No, a basic question, just to keep the discussions kickstart. On one part, Lord Krishna says ahimsa as one of the 20 values. On the other hand, he says yuddhasva. He says go and fight. So how do you relate these two?
I had the same question actually. Good question.
Sorry.
Yeah. Good question. Yeah.
Okay. A value in terms of all the values, there are two types of values. One is samanya, another one is vishesha. So everything, there is a samanyam as well as vishesham. Ahimsa is a samanya value that we will have to have irrespective of your gender or irrespective of your ashrama, irrespective of your varna. This is your samanya value that one should have, ahimsa. But every varna, every ashrama, both the genders have also something called a vishesha values. So if you look at it, ahimsa paramo dharma, it says ahimsa paramo dharma is it's a value that everybody has to have, especially if you are in the spiritual path, you will have to follow ahimsa. And in fact, for sannyasi, ahimsa is the topmost virtue that one should have. But if you look at a kshatriya has to protect the interests of the country, and therefore he will have to fight. And therefore, ahimsa is not. It will clash with this. The ahimsa, which is a samanya value, as against his vishesha value. And whenever the Shastra say, whenever there is a samanya vishesha value clash, the vishesha value takes precedence, number one. So in that case, ahimsa need not be followed. But more importantly, whenever Bhagavan says yuddhyasva, in this, Shankaracharya clearly explains, wherever there is yuddhyasva, replace it with swadharma. So do not take that literal meaning there. Whenever there is Bhagavan says yuddhyasva to Arjuna, what we will have to include is yuddhyasva means do your swadharma, Arjuna. So swadharma for Arjuna, being a kshatriya, restoring dharma is his duty, and therefore he has to fight this war. And therefore, although it may be against the samanya dharma, or there could be a conflict with samanya dharma, he will have to still follow his vishesha dharma. So there are, as I said, samanya values or samanya duties, and vishesha dharma, which is specific duties for people. So that is how we have to see this, the whole thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. See, Balaji, I have one question. See, basically, Atma is defined as totally nirguna, right, of a nirguna nature. But what is really peculiar is that the characteristic of bhoktrutva, bhoktrutva is what actually leads to the transmigration and the further births and everything else, according to this chapter itself. So now I really find it difficult to understand this concept of bhoktrutva for Atma. I mean, how is it that the Atma becomes an enjoyer or a experiencer of various gunas?
Okay. The Atma is nirguna. It does not experience. It is not capable of experiencing anything. But Atma, when it is reflected onto the mind, then it becomes an experiencer. The mind plus the reflected consciousness becomes Jivatma, which is what we call as Jivatma. And that Jivatma is capable of experiencing the, the pain and pleasures, the Sukham and Dukkham. So Atma by itself it does not do, but when it actually reflects to the mind or the body, then it becomes capable of experiencing. And when we say here Atma, the Jivatma is the one which is capable of experiencing, not the Atma itself, which means only when there is a reflection, you are able to experience things, or which you think we are experiencing. Because in Advaita Vedanta, remember, we are all under the illusion that we are Jivatmas, or we are this body-mind complex with this reflection. The body itself is only an instrument. We are only the Atma, and Atma itself is Nirguna and cannot experience anything. Hari Om.
See,
I don't know if-
I think, this, for example, let me just show you the thing that we presented actually right now. See here, 13, 20 and 21, Karyakarna kartritve hedu prakriti purusha sukadukhanam bhoktartve hedu. Okay.
Yes.
And the next verse says, Purusha prakritisto he bhunkte prakriti jangunan. All these are clearly saying that the Purusha is actually the bhokta.
Yes, yes.
So
Yes.
it is not a reflection or anything like that.
Yes, but it is. That's why even in my slide, I also mentioned that Purusha is the, I'll just share my slide also just in case.
Oh, sure, definitely.
So you're able to see this?
Yes.
So the Bhokta it's considered to be Purusha is Bhokta, but actually who is experiencing the sorrow or weight? It is the mind plus the Purusha, which is the Jivatma, which is actually experiencing the sorrow or pain or pleasures.
But mind is Prakriti, right? Mind is Prakriti, and
Yes.
Purusha is apart from that. So mind is beside the issue. Here it says clearly that Purusha is the Bhokta. So that is what I'm not able to understand.
Yeah, but in terms of the explanation given by all the acharyas, especially with Advaita Vedanta Parama, when they do this in this parampara, they basically clearly say that it is the Purusha. When we say Purusha here, it is the Purusha that is actually reflected on the mind. The reflected Purusha on the mind is the cause. So it says Purusha, but the reflection is what we mean here. The reflected Purusha on the mind, which is the reflected consciousness, which is the one which thinks it is in sorrow. And he explains, the further he explains why does that happen also. He says it is because of the attachment on the Maya's gunas. That is the cause of this sorrow or pain. So he says, he again says, if you see further in Shloka 29, he says, see, all actions are done by Prakriti alone.
Correct. Exactly. Yes.
It is clearly, he says, all actions are done by Prakriti alone. And who sees the Purusha to be selfless, akartaram, actionless. So if there is no action, how can he be a Bhokta?
Yeah, that is exactly the question.
Yeah. So if Purusha is supposed to be actionless, then how can he be a Bhokta? Only a doer can be an enjoyer. So
Yes.
that is why we have to understand here, when we say that he says Bhokta, it only means the reflected consciousness on the Prakriti that he is talking about. And therefore, we also says, why does that happen? Because of the in the womb, he will talk about, in Shloka number 30, Prakriti, Purusham Chaiva, where he will say basically the womb person who is actually attached to these gunas, and therefore he is the one who is actually
Yeah, I think that is the beginning.
Attachment. Okay, in the Shloka number 21.
Yeah.
Yeah, Purusha experiences the gunas born of Prakriti, and attachment to the gunas is the cause of birth in superior and inferior wombs. So the attachment comes from the the reflected consciousness on Prakriti and not the Purusha by itself, because that is why he is clarifying later, saying that the Purusha is actionless. That is, he definitely clears that the Purusha is actionless.
In 1321, he says Purusha Prakriti Stohi. I mean, sitting in the Prakriti, Purusha Bhunkte Prakritijan Gunan. So enjoys the gunas that are coming out of the Prakriti. So that is what is in 1321 says.
Residing in Prakriti.
Correct. Yes, exactly.
Residing in Prakriti is basically the reflected consciousness.
Okay. No, not the real Purusha. I mean, not
Yeah.
the.
Residing in Prakriti, the Purusha experiences, which means it is the reflected consciousness on Prakriti.
I see. Anybody else want to say anything?
Yeah, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa gives an example for that in his own way. I remember that. He says that Prakriti is a wife running around in the house, and Purusha is the husband sitting in a corner giving commands. So, actually, but without him, she is not going to act. But whatever she does doesn't affect him because he is not involved in that. So, he says this is what the Prakriti Purusha Sambandha is like, a husband and a wife. I mean, not today's husband and wife. Those days we talk about it. So,
in actually chapter 14, he will say, Bhagavan will say that Purusha is basically the father, the Prakriti is the mother.
Yeah.
And the womb, he will also explain about that in chapter 14. So anyway, yeah.
In fact, we chanted today. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rajesh is there? Rajesh, I think already left, is it? Oh, Rajesh is there. Rajesh ji, what is your comment?
Okay, I mean, first of all, congratulations to Balaji for such a scholarly and such a painstaking, presentation with so much of details.
As I said, Bhagavad Gita spends so much of his commentary on this chapter, and he writes so much on this chapter. So it's very, very important. Let me first express our sincere gratitude to Kishore for being our guest of honor for today, and also to our Balaji, our wonderful speaker for today. Balaji, there are a lot of requests for your PowerPoint from many of the people in this thing today. So, like last time, we can actually, if you can share with me, I can send it out, blast it out to entire. I think there are about 500 or 600 people or something are there, so I can send it to everybody if they like. They can read. So you can share with me, means I can send it out.
Okay.
And then we also like to express our gratitude to all the wonderful chanters and the Anindya who conducted the session for quiz today, and also all the participants for today's session. So thank you, everybody, and we offer everything as our offering to Lord Krishna's lotus feet. Thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you, KKG, for again coordinating the whole session. Thank you very much. And thanks also to Guruji Balaji, as somebody said, he was introduced.
Guruji Balaji.
No. I'm still a student. I'm not a Guruji. I'm a student. Yeah.
Potential Guruji la.
No. You are taking classes, so you're Guru to somebody. That's it. I mean, what is the level of Guru is different, but again, that's it. Okay.
Yeah, removal of ignorance is.
You are sharing your knowledge. So if I keep it to yourself, you become Bhokta.
Hari Om. So see you, everybody. Next session. Okay, bye-bye.
Hari Om.